Are you looking for an anime that'll make you go, why did I spend 50 minutes watching that this Halloween? Then look no further than 1991's Dark Cat. Dark Cat was a show produced by Ikki Suzuki, who in their early career did a lot of directing and now does mostly storyboarding. It's a horror OVA. It's definitely a product of the times, early 90s, 80s OVAs were all the thing, manga one-shots or original OVAs being produced and being released. It, is definitely from the 90s. So, Dark Cat follows two brothers who are dark cats, who are like these mystical beings who can turn from human to dark cat. I'm not 100% sure they're human because look at them. I don't think these guys are human compared to some of the other characters, but it basically follows them in their quest to try and find out the source of this great evil they're sensing in a high school in Japan. So as always, I don't want to spoil the show for you, because if you want to watch it after listening to this, maybe go and watch it. So I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I'm going to talk to you about some stuff that I noticed and stuff that I really liked and stuff that I thought was a bit, oh, okay, definitely a 90s OVA type deal. So let's kind of go in with the things I like. I like that we start with a bang. The first 2 to 3 minutes of this OVA is like bang, 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 intrigue. Super great way to open an OVA, super great way to open a show. It draws you in. I want to keep watching, even if it definitely slows down a lot after the opening. Opening really hooked me. Secondly, I really like the design of the two brothers we follow who are dark cats. They definitely stand out a lot. They definitely feel mystical. They feel very different compared to some of the other designs that you get for other characters who are mystical. I don't want to go too deep into it. They stand out a lot, especially the older brother. So I think that's a really positive. The visuals of the OVA definitely feel early 90s. It definitely felt like it didn't have the biggest budget. You can definitely make a really great looking anime, a really great looking OVA on a lower budget, but it just, and also it might have just been the quality I was watching it in, so I won't knock it too badly on this. But when I look back at something like Riding Bean, where everything just feels and looks like nostalgic and retro, this felt a little bit more like, ooh, I don't know how much budget you guys had for this. So it's not horrible, but I felt like, could have been better. But the designs themselves weren't too bad. Talking about visuals, there was a section in the middle of the OVA where it goes to watercolors, and I thought that was actually really cute and really well done. It's for a reason. You kind of see why it moved to watercolor slightly like a minute after it goes to watercolors, which, it definitely fits the vibe of what's happening, and it was actually very cute and very quaint, and it was nice to kind of see something slightly different be put into the OVA. That's kind of why I like OVAs. They experiment a lot, sometimes throwing in different art styles, even if it's just for a brief moment, definitely aligning with the plot. But I think that's a really great way of going about it. Tangentially related to visuals, but not at all, we're talking about the music. So there's a couple of songs that come out throughout the OVA, which I think are great. I'm not 100% sure they fit the vibe of the OVA, but they definitely are a good vibe to listen to. And again, something else you notice when you're watching these 80s, 90s OVAs, they really put effort into the soundtrack and the quality of the songs. Maybe they don't fully fit the vibe of what's going on, but the songs themselves are oh, this is good, this is catchy. It's definitely something where I would imagine in the early 90s you'd be like, I want to pick up the cassette, or they must have had CDs in the early 90s of this OVA. Let's say cassette. I definitely want to pick up the cassette of this OVA.
Pretty baby, there's a rainbow there when hate's not in the air.
So those are the two things I like the most that were outside of the plot and the themes. Let's talk about a couple of things that I was a bit iffy on that were outside of the plot and themes. So I feel like their use of transitions were a little bit lopsided. Certain characters got really cool transformation animation, and some characters they were like, we don't have the budget for you. Which I guess, if you look at some of the horror visuals, they look incredible. But then if you look at some of the transformations of the Dark Cat, it's like, oh, slightly more effort could have been put into this. So when it comes from a horror aspect, it's gruesome, it's gnarly at points. Really love that. I think that's definitely like the highest point of it. But when it comes to some of the transformation for some of the Dark Cats, it's a little bit underwhelming. Like, you could have really lent into that as well. That would have added to the mysticism of them, the kind of the atmosphere as well. But, I'm assuming a lot of the animators' time went into these gruesome, horrible, disgusting evil spirits that they put together. So I guess, you take some, you leave some. But, there's one transformation that's awesome for the Dark Cat. And then there's another one where it's like, oh, it feels like Blue Lock animation.
Wait. What the hell?
And you know what? That was my main non-plot gripe with the OVA. So actually, not too much bad to come out of it. I kind of acknowledge that, it seemed like a slightly lower budget early 90s OVA, so the visuals aren't going to be spectacular. There is some stuff that looks great, and there's some stuff that's a little bit underwhelming, unfortunately. Like, the art in itself is sometimes a little bit underwhelming. Again, feels a little bit like Blue Lock. But I think we can move on to the plot and the themes, which I would really love to discuss. In terms of pacing, it definitely felt like they were trying to fill the 50 minutes they had. So everything sort of fit neatly and nicely into the time they had. So it didn't feel like it dragged too much, but there were certain aspects I felt were added to the OVA that necessarily didn't need to be there, but they might have been added to kind of sell the OVA, or maybe, sell the original, writing the original manga. So there's a fight scene towards the end where I guess, like, it's cool and all, but it didn't necessarily need to be there. It took away from the emotional high point I felt at the very end of the OVA, which I felt slightly more time could have been given to that to really make it hit home. There was use of the very common theme of, there's evil within us, but we can fight against it. And even if there were things that are really pushing us towards, acting out on these harmful desires we may have, or, we're so put down, we're so upset that we're going to lash out about them, and our evil spirit grows because of that. It's a pretty common thing within anime theming, so it hits it does it pretty well. I think there's a twist at the very end of the OVA which was like, oh wow, I wasn't expecting that, and that definitely lent into that theme of evil and trying to combat the evil within us, and that we can overcome these negative emotions, these negative desires we have, and if we have those around us to help us, it makes it even easier. And that really is the message at the very end. And it kind of is shown through our evil desires, our evil feelings, our sadness, our pain, our anger is shown visually through these disgusting, very phallic monsters, which, might be another hint at, talking about certain people who may be acting out on their very negative desires. Hint, hint, wink, wink. But yeah, it's very well portrayed, and then after that it shows, kind of a purity through friendship and love. But I don't want to go too much into that because it's actually quite a nice visual to end the OVA, which I don't want to spoil if you're going to go off and watch it. And another theme that they touched on, which I do feel I wish they'd gone into more detail into, but again, you only had a 50-minute runtime, is kind of this nature versus urban environment. So a lot of the evil spirits and the darkness and the monsters come out in the cities, areas where people have congregated en masse. And oftentimes, you get these kind of negative emotions in a city sometimes where, everyone's busy about their day. People don't really have time for each other, and like sadness and anger festers, versus nature, the forest, where the protagonists are able to kind of purify themselves and heal and recover in the forest. There's, a forest spirit mommy in there as well, which we love to see. So I quite like that it was touching on that. I wish maybe they had a longer runtime and could have explored that a bit more. That kind of was a 5-minute period, and then we were back in the city. We were back fighting monsters inside the city. Kind of just something that would have been nice to get a little bit more of an explanation and a little bit more of exploration of that point. This is all to say that I actually went into recording this, and actually after watching Dark Cat, with a slightly more negative opinion of the show. I gave it a 2 on my anime list, but now that I've kind of spoken about it to you guys, I actually think it's a little bit more than a 2. I don't think it's that bad. I think in the context with which it was an early 90s OVA from a company which went bankrupt shortly after this came out, clearly didn't have the biggest budget to make this. Actually, it's not that bad of a 4A. I don't think it's a 2. It might be a 3 or a 4. So not excellent, but not horrible. Not a horrible watch. So, if you're interested in watching Dark Cat, you can check it out. Let me know in the comments down below if you have watched Dark Cat, and if you haven't, let me know if you're gonna go watch it. Make sure you do something spooky this Halloween. Watch some creepy monsters in a 15-minute OVA that you can definitely find online. Hint, hint, wink, wink. You can find it on a certain streaming platform you may be on at the moment. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Thank you for watching, and go watch some Dark Cat, baby!